Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Wild Health Podcast. I'm really excited today to have Mark Moses with us. Mark is the author of the international best-selling books Make Big Happen and Making Big Happen, and is the CEO and founding partner of CEO Coaching International, which has coached more than 1,000 of the world's top high-growth entrepreneurs and CEOs in over 60 countries. Mark's also competed and completed 12 full-distance Ironman triathlons, including the Hawaii Ironman World Championship 5 times. He also won the U.S. National Squash Championship in 1992, competed in the London Marathon in April 2019, and that qualified him for the Boston Marathon. He's had the honor of sitting down with President George W. Bush to discuss entrepreneurship and life as president. I mean, Mark is super accomplished from a professional, personal, family perspective. He grew up in Canada, lives in Miami Beach with his wife, Yvette, and their kids. And Mark and I have had the pleasure of working together as doctor and patient at Wild Health, and excited to dive into the connection between health and professional performance, some of his tips for CEOs, his own personal health insights, and to throw some rapid fire questions his way. So without further ado, here's Mark. Welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. I am absolutely thrilled today to welcome Mark Moses to the podcast. You all heard his introduction already. Mark, how's it going today, brother?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good to be with you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks so much for spending some time. I know how valuable your time is, and we appreciate you coming on and sharing some with us. So with the understanding of the value of your time, we're going to launch right into this. Just start me off with, what's your personal relationship with health? How's that evolved over the course of your life?
I've been an athlete all my life and an entrepreneur. So all in, all the time on whether it's athletics or business. So to me, I found that, like my old coach used to say, better be 1%, or better be 30% undertrained than 1% injured. And despite all of that, I've had a number of injuries along the way from my athletics, and then had to manage them and try to train through what I could when I could. So health has always been really important to me, and as I'm getting older, I recognize that what's truly going to make me happy longer term, I can have all the money in the world, but if I don't have good health, I don't really have anything. So it's very important to me.
Yeah, and this may be something where you go, yeah, it never really occurred to me, because it sounds like, and I mean, we know each other. I knew that about you. You've been a lifelong athlete, but I'd be curious, was there a point where you sort of discovered the connection between optimizing health and optimizing professional performance, or has that always been just sort of clicked together for you in your mind?
Yeah, having played competitive tennis since I was a youngster and then moved into other sports, I had a coach for my sports my entire career in sports. And I've had a coach in business since I was 24. So I've always had this approach to whatever I wanted in life, just go get the best. And I'm sure this is leading into the area of health. And for me, having my arms around the latest and greatest in optimizing my health, the latest and greatest in all the testing that you can do. Like Peter Diamandis says, you're likely to live to 120 years old today if you don't die of something stupid in the next 20 years or bad luck. And so I'll put stupid and bad luck in kind of into the same category in that let's talk about cancer screening, or let's talk about some of the heart testing as two examples of areas that I'll put that in. You can have bad luck and do the appropriate testing, catch it early, and can do something most of the time that you'll have a high probability of right side in that. On the other hand, if you don't do the testing, I'll put that in the bucket of doing something stupid. Don't do the testing, catch a stage 4 serious cancer diagnosis, you're in a completely different place. And I've had friends that are no longer here that have gotten a stage 4 diagnosis and they hadn't done any of the testing to know. So that might have been a long-winded answer.
No, it's great. I think I'm already inspired to bucket everything into a category of doing something stupid or bad luck. I think you could explain most of what comes your way through that lens. Before we dive into your relationship working, together at Wild Health over the last couple of years, I think one other, this is purely my own curiosity. How do you've got your incredible professional success and CEO coaching and all the things you've accomplished in the professional sphere. You've got your athletic success, but how do you feel like prioritizing your own health, physical, mental, spiritual, etc., helps you show up as a better coach or helps you show up as a leader? And if they're so intertwined that you can't separate them, are there examples of coaches or leaders you see who don't prioritize their health and how that may be a limitation for them?
Yeah, I believe how one shows up some of the time is how one shows up most or all of the time. So if one that prioritizes one area of their life often chooses, not always, but often chooses to prioritize the other areas of their life. So for me, I this probably predates our relationship. I've always felt this way. I'll say 3.5, because I'm not as good at the half. Yet I would say number one for me, I've learned over the years to be a high functioning athlete, family man, and in my business is I gotta get a good night's sleep. So for me, that's somewhere between 8 and 9 hours a night. And year to date, this year, I have averaged 8 hours and 8 minutes of sleep, not time in bed, but actual sleep time. I'm not sure how many people actually know that stat about themselves, but I know my stat is 8 hours and 8 minutes year to date. And my goal for the year is to sleep an average of over 8 hours per night throughout the year. So that enables me to function better when I get a good night's sleep. Secondly, it's having a good diet. And I don't mean being on a diet, but eating healthy foods forever. You won't see me at a fast food place since college. You won't see me eat fried food. You won't see me eat anything that one would not be eaten. I have a couple of vices, red wine and maybe a little bit of ice cream. Other than that, I eat very clean. So try to eat a good diet. And the third item is exercise. And I view that when I exercise 6-ish days a week, I feel really good. And combine all those three things, I can optimize my performance in my life. The half would be more my mental health. which you guys, your profession, will put this in the bucket of meditation or breathing. And for me, meditation, I don't want to say it's for the birds, but it's it's really hard for me. It might be better for the birds in my case, but I've really tried every day to do some breathing exercises, just short periods of time, 3-4 times a day to slow things down, calm things down. And so I'll give myself a half on that. I'll give myself good grades on the others.
Yeah. Thank you for that. No, it's and I think it's a great and really common point that, and not to slot you into a phenotype or a stereotype, but folks who are generally, 12 Ironman accomplished and multiple marathons often have a hard time with seated meditation as a stress resiliency technique. It's just a little too slow and passive, and breathing, at least breath work, gives you a structure. It feels like an exercise, not like, exhaustive exercise, but it feels like you're doing something as opposed to just being, which can be very hard for somebody who's driven professionally, athletically, etc. So, that's been part of our work together, has been finding like, okay, what is a good stress reduction, stress resiliency technique that isn't making you do something you hate? That's for the birds. So,
Sure.
Yeah. Probably a good time to pivot into our relationship professionally, and I won't bore the audience with the ways you've helped me personally, and outside of just telling me that I was exercising like an old person when we worked out together, and when was my real workout going to start. So I appreciate being.
We're going to go do a workout together. I always require a proper workout, like at least putting in an honest effort, right? I couldn't believe you were gone before I got my cardio done. I still had weights to do, but that's probably a different topic.
It's a different topic, but now I just have to go on record with the fact that I did beat you multiple times at pickleball, even though you are a former national squash champion. And I'm saying it now, just before Thanksgiving 2024, because I will almost certainly never beat you again. So that's
a fair statement.
That was my one take-home win for athletically that trip. Okay. Back to Wild Health. So, what you've been dedicated to your health forever. Highly focused on your health. We started working together a couple of years back. And I don't think. I think we probably did have this conversation back then, but maybe we didn't, and I certainly don't remember it if we did. What drove you? Like, what were your initial goals coming to work with us at Wild Health? Because it wasn't like health was a new thing for you, right? I mean, you were already pretty focused. So, what would you say your initial goals were? And as a part two, did those evolve over the course of the time that we've been working together?
Yeah, Mike, that's a good question. I kind of came to you at a time where my concierge doc at the University of Miami left to go run the Cleveland's clinic, and I didn't like the new doc. I just ended up in my lap. And so I had met somebody on your team, and she ended up introducing us. So when we met, my goals were around ensuring I was getting the best, I'll say, best testing that I should. So anything on the preventative side was probably the primary goal. Anything else beyond that, I'll say that was, we'll call that a bonus. And so I appreciate and I've appreciated the very disciplined approach that you've provided for the testing that we get done and the quality of the testing that we do. I remember being upset once when I called you right away when we did that heart testing, and I had something like a 2% chance of having some sort of heart issue over the next decade, and I couldn't understand why it wasn't at 0, and which I guess that's probably another obsession, but I've appreciated the testing, and for example, the tests that I refer to folks all the time. There are probably 3 material tests that I recommend that everybody should have. One is that Clearly test, to just understand where you stand as it relates to your heart. And I like it. It's a quick test. Takes about 10 minutes. Do it once a year, and you know exactly where you stand as it relates to your heart. The second thing is the Grail test. And they test for all kinds of cancers in your blood. Easy to do. They come to my home. Boom, 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 knocked out. They do take quite a bit of blood when they come out. I'm sure it tests for other things as well. But they, once or twice a year, you know where you stand from a cancer standpoint as it relates to your blood. And the third thing is the Prenuvo testing that looks at, the scan of your entire body, looking for tumors or anything that might be offside, that the blood won't catch, but the Prenuvo MRI will catch. And I would say those to me are the foundational testing. Now, we've done some genetic testing and food testing and IGF and all this other stuff that is, I'll call it more on the nice to know side, as opposed to this other stuff, which I believe you need to know. And it goes back to the bad luck or stupid part of the conversation we were having earlier.
Yeah. Outside of the, so the way I think about caring for folks is multifaceted, and one is definitely in this sort of chronic disease prevention / risk reduction category, which I think is where these kind of tests slot in, right? So if you don't know whether you have atherosclerotic heart disease and plaque in your coronary arteries, you're not really doing a good job at reducing your long-term cardiovascular risk. If you're not screening for cancer, et cetera, like that's all in the chronic disease prevention and risk reduction area. Then there's the sort of health optimization side of things, and whether that's focusing on improving sleep or body composition, dropping visceral fat, adding lean muscle, improving bone mineral density, getting your stress levels to a better level, ensuring that you've got that sort of like, spiritual, emotional side dialed. And a lot of that is health coaching related. And I'd love to hear, I'm going to out you a little. This isn't no personal health information, but I remember when we first met, I was like, I really can't wait to get you set up with Trey, who's our health coach. And you were like, I coach for a living. I've been doing coaching for a living for 20, 30 years. I don't need a coach. I know what coaching is. And, I meet people where they are, right? So we didn't like push coaching on you. And then at one point, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months ago, you were like, okay, I'm open to it. And I'd love to hear what your experience has been like as a master coach and someone who's built an organization of master coaches. Like, what has it been like to have a health coach? Because you had coaches for athletics, as you mentioned. You had a business coach since you were 24. Any surprise insights or breakthroughs that you've had since working with health coaching?
Yeah, so I don't take advantage of it as much as others do. You work with a number of my friends, and you work with some people that work for my organization, and you work with my wife. So I would say that I feel that I got most of that, and I would view it more as a reinforcement or an optimization of what I already knew. And with some nuggets that I can take them or leave them, I think it's, for me, it's a nice to have. I don't need it. Yet my wife likes it. Those folks you work with in my own organization really like it. It's been game-changing for them. It's been game-changing for some friends of mine So yeah, I guess that's where I'll put it in the bucket. I don't, it's nice.
Well, I love that honest assessment, because I don't want this to turn into a masquerading as a Wild Health commercial. Like, this
Yeah,
is a
it's not
real
going to happen. That
experience,
won't
and
happen here.
yeah, and well, not for you, but for listeners. And I think it's it's a good example of what this program looks like, because we're not going to schedule you for weekly coaching calls when coaching isn't something that you feel like is adding a ton of value for you, right? As opposed to other folks who we work with, who really love the sort of accountability and the day-to-day or even week-to-week coaching and helping people navigate what health looks like to them. Any noticeable improvements? And again, I'm going out on a ledge here, because it might just be like, nope. But any like real, like, where do you feel like the needle's been moved for you outside of knowledge on results of testing and, knowing where you stand from a cardiovascular and a cancer risk perspective? Other areas that you've seen improvement into either better performance or body comp or other aspects of your life where you feel like you've improved since working together?
I would say probably the most meaningful is probably my perspective around alcohol. And for maybe 30 years, my wife and I would drink a bottle of wine, not each, but together. We'd share a bottle of wine every night. And it's interesting that it's just become a habit, and or I'll say a social habit. It begins around 5 or 6 o'clock, and I would say the piece that has been material for me is the recognition that there might have been a time that a glass of wine or two was good for you, and now the information around that has changed. So my wife and I made a big effort. Monday through Thursday, and most of the time, no alcohol, and even though wine is really the only thing that we drink, we're just making an effort. If you have a bottle of wine every night, and that's 2.5 glasses each every night, that's a lot of glasses of wine per week. 2.5 times
That's
7, whatever that number is, 18 or whatever. That's a lot of glasses of wine per week. So we made an effort to cut that back to 6 or 7 glasses a week over Friday, Saturday, Sunday now.
I love it. Love it. Thank you for that. All right. Well, I got some rapid fire questions lined up for you, but before we get into those, you have been a real advocate and I think an inspiration to a lot of your colleagues, your employees, around what health really means. So I'd love to hear, like, what's if you have a go-to or just today's go-to piece of advice that you'd offer to an entrepreneur, a CEO, a coach who feels like they don't have time to focus on their health. They've got to close this deal, or they got to do this, or like it's more, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like that sort of full, when you bump up against those folks, what's your approach? What do you say to them?
I really don't think you can bring your A game if you're not optimizing your health. And I just really don't think so. Underslept, poor food, boozing, like a lot of business meetings, they're bourbon and whiskey. And how do you bring your A game with that? And so it's a matter of prioritizing what really matters to you. Most executives or CEOs would tell you that their health really matters to them, yet do their actions really show that they're making health a priority, and do they have the focus and discipline to make that a priority? For example, in my own world, we work out at the same time every day. It's in the morning. We have a routine. it's just a routine. It's just what we do. Like my trainer showed up this morning at 8 o'clock because that's what she does on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. That's the day the trainer comes, and I would tell an executive they just don't get it. And if their health really matters to them, they need to make it a priority and plan for that. And at least plan to get the testing done once a year. Like, I know I got my pre-nuvo coming up, and earlier this year, I did my Clearly, and I just did my blood work again. This is just something that we do. My wife was telling me that she thought I had a hearing problem, and I didn't think I had a hearing problem. You sent me for a test, and I found out I didn't have a hearing problem, and maybe my wife mumbles, and maybe you need to send her to a speech pathologist to speak better. I don't know. Or maybe I just need to pay attention more, right?
I was going to say, are you having an issue hearing her or just hearing in general?
Right. So, my hearing was perfect, and the doctor was laughing.
Yeah, well, it's always a possibility that that's what you're going to find. Well, I love that advice though, and I think when you're speaking to people who are really hard driving entrepreneurs and really focused on achievement in one realm, sometimes bringing back, hey, you're really not achieving everything you could be achieving in that area that seems to be the most important to you if you're not optimizing your health and you're not taking care of yourself, right? So kind of, again, meeting them where they are. All right. Just to get to know Mark a little bit better for our audience, rapid fire, only a handful here for you. What is your favorite post-workout recovery meal?
Well, it depends on how big I go in terms of how long a day. When I was doing my Ironman training, it was like 5:45 a.m. I'd swim for 75 minutes, ride my bike for 6 hours, and then go for a 4 or 5 mile run. That was a long day. Man, it's whatever I was fortunate enough to have when I got home. That would be it. But most times, I love a protein smoothie with all the good protein in it, and berries and almond butter and coconut milk and the fiber, all the stuff I ought to have. Get my 40-ish grams of protein. That's generally what we do every day.
Love it. This one made me laugh when my team put together some ideas for questions that I then tweaked, but this one, they actually wrote the one health metric that you track religiously. And I started laughing because you track a lot of health metrics religiously. So I'm going to rephrase that one for us and say you're only allowed to track 2 health metrics on your desert island. Which tracking devices, or forget the devices, what do you track? And I mean, is it sleep? Is it body comp? Like, all the things you track. So like, you can only track 2 now, Mark. I'm sorry, but what are they?
Well, I'm pretty sure you know this, but at the end of December of this year, every time my wife and I have had sex for the last 11 years, I can give you month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year comparisons, an 11-year trailing average. And so, which is unusual. I understand. But I do have that data, and I will, that metric.
That's coming to the desert island. Yeah, that's definitely coming
I
to
got
the desert
that
island.
one in, sleep's automatic. I know that I'm getting my sleep. I have data that gives me that, but I have probably, I haven't looked how many years, but probably at least all the way back to 2004. I have every single workout I've ever done, monthly totals for every exercise, and annual totals, distance and time.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's, a walking example of what gets measured gets managed.
I'd like to say if you can't define it, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. All right, last one on the rapid fire, and then we'll land this plane. And I know you got a hard stop coming up that I want to be respectful of. What, if any, big event are you training for or thinking about training for in the next year or two, athletically?
Yeah, no, I figured that, or that's where my mind went anyway. I'd like to do another marathon. I was signed up for the Miami Marathon, but I got invited to go on the Ritz-Carlton yacht for a speaking event, which bumps me out of that marathon. So I'm going to sign up for a marathon next year. Berlin is on my mind. It's one of the majors. It's fast course. I'm turning 60. Probably by the time that this airs, I will already be 60 because that's coming up here in a few weeks. And I'd like to have my fastest marathon ever at the age of 60. And I had my fastest ever at 55, qualified for Boston then, and I'd like to do it again at 60.
Amazing. Inspirational as always. And I just, here's one person who knows you'll end up doing it. Because if you decide you want to, I know it's going to happen. So excited to help coach and support you through that, because we could probably do some pretty deliberate, focused work to make sure you hit that goal. All right. Well, Mark, closing thoughts for me. Anything that you feel like we didn't touch on that you want to make sure we have a chance to talk about?
I would say to those that are considering stepping up their game on the health side, that having a proper concierge doc. There's a lot of docs that label themselves as concierge docs, but they don't have the access to or commitment to delivering the kind of care that you do and Wild Health does. If I would recommend to my friends, as you know, I refer most of my friends over to you, because if you can afford it, why would you not want to get the best care? And so, best care in terms of testing, and then best care when you're dealing with an issue. And so, I would recommend all to have a really good look at this. It's worth it.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Mark. For listeners, this is all in the show notes and probably in the intro already anyway, but check out Mark's books, Make Big Happen, Making Big Happen, both at ceocoachinginternational.com. We'll have links to everything in the show notes so you can check out really, inspirational leadership. The books are up on the video. Love it. And can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today, Mark. It's great to see you as always, and really appreciate you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you too very much, and I know my friends do as well. You're making a big difference for them, and my wife appreciates you very much as well. So, Mike, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, and we appreciate your wife too. I won't say if it's more or less than we appreciate you. We'll say we're tied. We're tied for how much we appreciate
just one
you guys.
Funny story about my wife as we close here. We were at a hotel in Toronto this weekend, and of course we went to the gym, and I'm on the Peloton. My wife comes over and she's bleeding all over the place, and she was doing these box jumps. And jumping up onto this metal box, and I guess missed the box on one of the jumps, and cut a leg wide open to the bone. And it's like, why does a woman at 56 years old need to be jumping on up to a steel box, and how's that going to enhance her health? The next day I went back to the gym. She was recovering with her stitches and all that, and there was a sign on the box that said, no jumping. And No, I'm just kidding. But I told my wife that there was that sign on the box. No jumping for women at 56 and over. Get yourself a box made of foam. Don't jump on the metal one.
Oh my gosh, too much. Well, I hope her leg heals up quickly in time for the holidays. And thanks again, Mark. So good seeing you and talking to you. And I'm going to be thinking about what signs I need to put on the equipment in the garage to keep everybody safe this week.
All right, man. Good to see you, Mike.
You too. Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you want more daily health education, be sure to follow us on Instagram, which is filled with health optimization how-tos, grocery shopping lists, guided breathwork posts, myth debunking, and so much more. You can find us at Wild Health MD on Instagram.